Welcome back to Math 103. This is video number 6 on measuring power. We take a new look at our original example of the New Jersey Advisory Committee, given by a quota of only 5, the bare minimum, and weights 4, 3, and 2 as before, and we ask which players, if any, have veto power. There are no players here with veto power, and to understand why, let's reason it out by looking at the Grand Coalition. It will turn out to be very useful to do this analysis just in terms of the Grand Coalition. So what would it mean for N to have veto power? It would mean that the other players, C and S, could not put together enough votes to pass a motion. Well, here, where the quota is only 5, C and S do have enough votes between the two of them. 3 plus 2 is 5. So C and S do have just enough votes to pass a motion, to pass a proposal without any help from N. So that means that N does not have veto power. N's refusal to vote yes cannot prevent a motion from passing, but that's actually equivalent to the statement that N is not critical in the Grand Coalition. Right? They are really the same thing. N cannot single-handedly block a motion by voting no, and N cannot turn the Grand Coalition from winning to losing by refusing to participate. Similarly, by the same reasoning, C does not have veto power. If C refuses to vote yes, if C withholds those 3 yes votes, well, the other two players combined, N and S, have a total of 6 yes votes that they can cast, so the two of them, if they want to, can get together and pass a motion. So C is not capable of blocking a motion from passing just by voting no single-handedly, and that's exactly the same statement as the statement that C is not critical in the Grand Coalition. Okay? If we look at the Grand Coalition and study the effect of C departing from it, well, N and S combined will remain, at any rate the two of them without C, they will remain a winning coalition even if C quits, so C is not critical in the Grand Coalition. Similarly, S is not a veto power player. S is not critical in the Grand Coalition. So we've figured out a very useful fact, a useful general fact, which it will be helpful to us to keep in mind in the future, namely, a player has veto power if and only if that player is critical in the Grand Coalition. You can detect veto power by studying the Grand Coalition and seeing who's critical there. Now consider the scenario in which 1 million southern New Jersey residents move to central New Jersey, because obviously it's not crowded enough yet in central New Jersey. So if the quota is set at 6, then the weighted voting system is quota 6, Northern Jersey still has weight 4, Central Jersey now has weight 4 also, it went up from 3, and Southern is down to 1 from originally 2. This is our weighted voting system, and we can ask which players, if any, have veto power. Building on what we just figured out, building on what we just learned, we can answer this question by thinking, again, about the Grand Coalition and seeing if anyone is critical there. Well, Northern Jersey has 4 votes, and we ask if Northern Jersey quits and leaves just Central and Southern Jersey as the yes voters, Central and Southern combined cannot pass a proposal without Northern Jersey's assistance. Therefore, it follows that Northern Jersey is critical in the Grand Coalition. Similarly, Central Jersey is now critical in the Grand Coalition, but Southern Jersey is not. If this one vote is withheld, this one yes vote is withheld, the remaining yes votes add up to 8, and that is certainly enough to pass a proposal here. So we conclude that Northern and Central Jersey are critical in the Grand Coalition, and therefore Northern and Central Jersey both have veto power. Right? So each one on its own has the power to block a proposal from passing just by voting no. It's worth noting here that a weighted voting system can have 0 players with veto power. That's a possibility. It could have 1 player with veto power. There could be 2 players with veto power. It could be that all the players have veto power. These are all possibilities, and you don't know in advance until you go and do the kind of analysis we've just been doing. So, as an example, look at the weighted voting system 9:432. So same weights as in our original scenario, 4, 3, and 2, but now the quota is the largest it could possibly be. The quota is the sum of all the weights. That means that no 2 players can have enough votes to pass a proposal without the participation of the third. Even Northern and Central do not, between the 2 of them, have enough to pass a proposal without the assistance and cooperation of Southern Jersey. So it really requires everyone to vote yes in order to pass everything, which means that every player has veto power. All 3 have veto power. That's interesting because they each have a different weight officially. However, they're clearly playing exactly the same role here. Everyone has the same status when you really look at what it takes to pass something. That's a general principle that's worth remarking on. If unanimous approval is required in order to pass a motion, what that really means is that every player has veto power. Now, it's also worth remarking while we're at it that you'd be in big trouble if you set the quota any higher than 9 in this example, or in general if you set the quota higher than the sum of all the weights. Why? Well, if the quota were 10, for example, that means that even if everyone voted yes, you still couldn't pass anything. That would be a rather pointless sort of system to set up. That would be the ultimate legislative gridlock, if it were systematically impossible to pass anything at all. There is another notion, that of a player who can single-handedly cause a motion to pass, and that's called a dictator. Right? So notice the distinction. A veto power player could single-handedly cause a motion to fail by voting no, whereas a dictator can single-handedly cause a motion to pass by voting yes. So if there is a dictator, we can ask, well, how must his, her, its weight be related to the quota? Think about that for a moment. In order for your yes vote by itself to be enough to pass a motion, it must be that your weight is greater than or equal to the quota. Equal to is fine, greater than is fine too, but that is the characterization of the weight of a dictator. So for example, look at the weighted voting system 6:632. Right, a narrative here would be that, for example, another 2 million people move into the state, and they all move into Northern Jersey because Bergen County isn't crowded enough. So we have, for example, 6 million people living in Northern Jersey, 3 million in Central, 2 million in Southern, and since the sum of these weights equals 11, the smallest the quota could possibly be is 6. 6 is the smallest integer that is greater than half the sum of the weights. So this could conceivably arise in practice, or at any rate, we can construct a narrative that explains how someone might think to set this up if they weren't thinking through the consequences of it. And so now, not only is it the case that Northern Jersey could single-handedly pass a proposal, but it's illuminating to see what happens when we write out the list of winning coalitions. So we've got, as always, the Grand Coalition, Northern, Central, and Southern Jersey. We've got Northern and Central, that has enough votes to pass something. We've got Northern and Southern. We've got Northern alone, and that's it. So we now have a feature that we've not seen before. We now have a winning coalition consisting of just one player, and that is actually characteristic of what it is to be a dictator. You can tell whether there is a dictator not just from looking at quota and weights, but just from a list of winning coalitions, a complete list of winning coalitions. If there is a player who appears solo as a winning coalition unto him or herself, then that is a dictator. So this general principle is worth recording here. A player is a dictator if and only if there is a winning coalition consisting of that player alone. So earlier we were recognizing veto power in a player by noticing that that player appears in every winning coalition, and now we can recognize dictator status by the occurrence of a winning coalition with just that one player. So we can infer a great deal just from the complete list of winning coalitions without even necessarily referring back to the numerical quota and weights. Before going on to the next video, please answer the following questions about how having veto power and being a dictator are or aren't related. So based on the way we've defined these two terms, veto power and dictator, can a player with veto power also be a dictator? Is a player with veto power necessarily also a dictator? Can a dictator have veto power? And does a dictator necessarily have veto power? So what exactly is the relationship between these two terms?